Just before sunrise, Oakland was ripped awake by thunder. Not the kind that rolls through the bay, but the kind that comes from flashbangs. Streets once silent now pulsed with armored vehicles, sirens, and shouting in 2 languages. Was this the sound of justice, or the echo of a nation fighting its own decay? At 5:12 a.m., the FBI and DEA executed one of the largest gang raids in California's modern history. Federal SWAT teams converged on multiple East Oakland blocks, Colombo Street, Fruitvale Avenue, and the shadows of San Antonio Park. Their target, the Serrano gang, a violent street arm of the Mexican Mafia La M that had turned entire neighborhoods into strongholds of fear. The operation, years in the making, was codenamed Operation Take Back America. It marked the culmination of a 4-year federal investigation tracing murders, drug trafficking, and cartel money from Los Angeles to Northern California's heart. 10 FBI agents stormed one house alone. Across the city, door after door fell to battering rams as agents extracted suspects at gunpoint. 9 high-ranking members were captured. 2 were already in prison. 1 remains on the run. Inside safe houses, agents found more than drugs. They found a network. Methamphetamine, fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, and ledgers coated with symbols of loyalty to La M. Federal officials say this was no ordinary gang takedown. The Serranos were not street punks. They were soldiers in a prison army, their orders transmitted from California's most fortified cells, Pelican Bay, Corcoran Folsom. Each message sent through contraband phones, coded letters, or whispers in visiting rooms. The operation was designed with military precision. For years, agents built the case through wiretaps, drones, and deep cover informants. They tracked money transfers from Oakland to prison accounts. They mapped encrypted chats that coordinated murders. They identified the hierarchy shot callers, runners, enforcers, and learned who among them carried the power to green light a killing. In the words of one senior FBI official, this was not a gang. It was an army built inside our prisons and unleashed onto our streets. President Donald Trump briefed on the operation hours before it launched, praised federal agencies for what he called a decisive strike against the criminal networks poisoning America's cities. His administration has doubled federal task force funding since 2024, merging DEA, FBI, and Homeland Security assets into joint urban strike teams. The raid in Oakland was their largest domestic operation under that new doctrine. Yet beneath the headlines lies a deeper tension. Can America win its war against organized crime without becoming the surveillance state it fears? As federal power expands to crush gangs like the Serranos, what happens to the fragile balance between safety and liberty? Oakland's dawn raid may have shattered one criminal empire, but it also raises a question that echoes beyond the Bay. How much freedom must a democracy sacrifice to feel secure? When federal agents cracked the walls of the Serrano gang's empire, they uncovered a design far more intricate than street-level violence. Hidden within Oakland's backstreets was a system that mirrored a government taxation hierarchy, territory discipline, all answering to a power hundreds of miles away, the Mexican Mafia. Inside prison cells across California, La M generals issued orders that reached the asphalt of East Oakland. According to federal court documents, the Serranos functioned as a northern command post for the Mafia's vast criminal architecture. Money, drugs, and weapons moved in a loop from cartel suppliers in Mexico through Los Angeles, couriers into Oakland's neighborhoods, and finally back to the prison accounts that sustained the organization's war chest. Every dollar paid by local dealers, every bullet fired on the street strengthened the empire behind bars. The gang was divided into 2 primary factions, the San Antonio Park Clique SAP and the Southside Locos SSL 502. Each controlled its own grid of streets marking territory with graffiti that was less art than declaration of sovereignty. SAP patrolled near schools and playgrounds, embedding itself in the community's daily rhythm. SSL 502 spread further south, turning Arroyo Viejo Park into an outdoor marketplace for narcotics and intimidation. Residents lived under a code of silence. Businesses paid street taxes to survive. Encrypted group chats replaced hand signals. Surveillance drones replaced lookouts. What once looked like chaos was in fact an organized ecosystem of violence, digital, decentralized, and dangerously efficient. For 4 years, federal agents infiltrated that system, tracing encrypted conversations and cash flows through shell companies. According to Reuters and The Guardian, investigators discovered that funds moved through family-run businesses and money service networks that disguised prison payments as legitimate invoices. The operation revealed how the line between prison and street had disappeared entirely. Officials said that LAM's Oakland branch reported directly to generals incarcerated at Pelican Bay and Corcoran State Prison. Each order, known as a green light, could mean death for a rival or for a member who failed to pay dues. The code of obedience was absolute. The BBC reported that gang leaders even used social media platforms to mask communications, blending coded slang into ordinary messages. What looked like harmless chatter about sports or family often carried execution orders. This adaptation showed how criminal empires evolve faster than law enforcement can legislate. Meanwhile, the Justice Department's Operation Take Back America became a test case for Trump's domestic security doctrine, fusing intelligence agencies under one digital command to counter transnational threats inside U.S. borders. Critics warn that such integration, while effective, risks turning domestic policing into a national security apparatus without oversight. Still, few deny the effectiveness of the strike. The FBI's Safe Streets Task Force estimated that the Serrano's removal cut off one of LAM's last northern arteries, an operation valued at millions in drug revenue. But what does it say about the American system when prisons designed to contain criminals become the headquarters of their empire? Is control possible when the command structure is embedded within the very institutions meant to dismantle it? As agents hauled evidence out of Oakland's safe houses, from coded ledgers to prison tax receipts, the reality became clear. America's war on organized crime is no longer confined to its streets. It is being fought from within its own walls. The human cost of the Serrano empire is stark. Between 2018 and 2021, federal prosecutors linked the gang to 2 execution-style murders and 3 attempted killings. Victims were not always rivals. Civilians, former members, and anyone accused of disrespecting the organization were targets. Ballistic analyses connected the firearms used in Oakland to suppliers tied to Southern California cartels. Handguns, rifles, even shotguns, every weapon was a piece of a broader, coordinated strategy. Neighborhoods once vibrant with community life became zones of fear. Parks turned into armed checkpoints. School corridors were patrolled by sentinels of intimidation. Residents spoke of graffiti that was more than art. It was a ledger of power, an unspoken contract demanding submission. Children grew up in the shadow of gang control. Their play spaces overlapped by surveillance and threat. Small businesses paid tribute to survive their owners, weighing compliance against the risk of violence. The SAP clique maintained lookouts and used encrypted apps to monitor law enforcement movements. SSL 502 managed firearms storage and recruited minors into the low-level supply chain. The coordination was so precise it resembled military logistics, an urban army with roles reporting lines, and an intelligence apparatus. According to DW and Al Jazeera, the gang structure allowed LAM to project influence far beyond Oakland, sustaining a criminal economy that fed imprisoned leaders while terrorizing street communities. Federal agents described the discovery of kites, coded letters, and contraband cell phones as proof of a seamless communication pipeline. Each green light from prison authorized violence on the streets. Completed orders were reported back using encrypted messages, confirming obedience and reinforcing control. The operation revealed that what appeared to be local street crime was actually part of a sophisticated paramilitary network. Public safety had been systematically undermined. Federal prosecutors noted that the Serrano's influence extended into public spaces, housing blocks, and even school zones. Law enforcement agencies said that every action, murders, narcotics, trafficking, extortion was sanctioned through a command structure that made the gang virtually untouchable until now. The human impact was measurable in more than fear. Trauma, loss, and a sense of perpetual insecurity defined daily life. Families altered routines, children avoided parks, and communities internalized a culture of silence. The Guardian highlighted interviews with residents who described nights punctuated by gunfire and mornings marked by the lingering presence of armored vehicles. Yet with the arrests of the 9 gang leaders, there was a tangible shift. Graffiti began disappearing almost overnight. The streets, while still wary, reflected the first signs of liberation from an enforced criminal order. But federal officials warned that remnants of the network remained in smaller cells under surveillance. The fight for Oakland's neighborhoods was far from over. The question now is stark. Can communities recover from an embedded criminal army? And how long will it take before the shadows of fear lift entirely from streets once dominated by paramilitary gangs? The operation's most striking revelation was the scale of the Serrano's arsenal and its integration with cartel networks. Inside East 31st Street and Fruitvale Avenue, Safe House's agents found AR-15 rifles, shotguns, handguns with extended magazines, and ballistic vests, enough firepower to rival a small militia. The seizure wasn't just a collection of weapons, it was evidence of a militarized criminal pipeline spanning California. Methamphetamine, fentanyl, cocaine, and heroin were recovered in pounds alongside ledgers documenting narcotics transactions, prison taxes, and coded identifiers for buyers and runners. Each entry was a link in a broader system, feeding profits back to La M generals behind bars. Weapons traced to Los Angeles and Modesto homicides demonstrated how Oakland was not an isolated theater, but part of a multi-state criminal operation. Defense News emphasized that these networks blurred the line between domestic gangs and transnational crime syndicates, illustrating a hybrid pipeline of street enforcement, cartel logistics, and prison command. Officials explained that the Oakland Serranos acted as both armory and distribution hub. They coordinated with Mexican cartels to import narcotics from Mexico through Southern California and into the East Bay. Encrypted communication and contraband phones allowed imprisoned leaders to manage operations remotely, a digital command center from inside maximum security facilities. The sophistication of their system forced federal agencies to respond in kind. 8 tactical teams executed 16 simultaneous search and arrest warrants across East Oakland and San Leandro, striking homes, garages, and gang-controlled storefronts. Inside a single safe house, investigators discovered a bulletproof vest embroidered with Lamy Norte, a symbol declaring loyalty to a prison-based empire. Each recovered device, ledger, and firearm told a story of operational discipline and reach. Law enforcement officials emphasized the strategic implications. The dismantling of the Oakland Serranos significantly weakened La Aim's ability to enforce street control and collect narcotics revenue in Northern California. It was the most significant disruption of the Mexican Mafia in the Bay Area in over a decade, yet experts caution that prison-based command networks are resilient. While a branch can be dismantled, the broader system adapts. Strategically, this operation underscored America's challenge in balancing domestic safety and civil liberties. Law enforcement's use of wiretaps, digital surveillance, and coordinated federal task forces raised questions about privacy oversight and federal authority. At the same time, the need to dismantle paramilitary gangs within civilian neighborhoods demanded decisive action. Trump's administration framed the raid as a demonstration of federal power, an assertion that criminal networks cannot operate with impunity on U.S. soil. The operation also exposed a broader lesson: organized crime now functions like a corporation with logistics, finance, and intelligence capabilities integrated across borders and institutions. The challenge is not merely law enforcement, but the preservation of the social fabric of communities under siege. As the streets of East Oakland returned to a fragile calm, a pressing question emerged. How can America preemptively dismantle such networks before they embed themselves so deeply? And can the nation maintain freedom while wielding the surveillance tools necessary to protect it? The legal machinery moved swiftly after the raids. 9 Serrano leaders were charged under the RICO Act, a statute designed to dismantle entire criminal enterprises rather than prosecute individual foot soldiers. Counts included murder, attempted murder, conspiracy to traffic narcotics, and possession of firearms by felons. Federal prosecutors detailed a network that laundered drug profits through family members, coordinated killings from behind bars, and enforced prison taxes across street-level operations. The indictment painted a portrait of a criminal army, not a simple gang. U.S. Attorney Craig H. Misaki called the operation one of the largest Mexican Mafia-affiliated indictments in Bay Area history. FBI Assistant Director Akil Davis confirmed that the arrests decapitated the Oakland command structure. The shooters were in custody, supply lines cut, and communication with imprisoned generals severed. President Trump, observing from Washington, hailed it as a decisive blow against criminal networks threatening American communities. His administration framed this as a model for countering transnational gang influence domestically. But the aftermath revealed complexities. The Justice Department emphasized that remnants of the network remained in scattered cells, all under federal surveillance. Some arrested members agreed to cooperate in exchange for reduced sentences, potentially providing intelligence on prison hierarchies and financial flows. The IRS Criminal Investigation Division and FBI Digital Forensics Unit are tracing illicit funds, uncovering links between street-level operations and higher-tier facilitators still embedded within the system. Meanwhile, communities in East Oakland reacted with a mix of relief and apprehension. Graffiti that once declared territorial dominance began disappearing overnight. Streets once patrolled by enforcers slowly reclaimed a sense of civilian life. Yet neighbors remained wary. Years of intimidation cannot be undone instantly. For many, the trauma of extortion, daily gunfire, and the omnipresence of a paramilitary gang lingers. Experts suggest that dismantling the Oakland Serranos may provide a blueprint for federal intervention against similarly structured gangs nationwide. Jane's Defense Weekly highlighted the operation as an example of urban counter-gang strategy, blending intelligence, tactical precision, and legal frameworks to disrupt command hierarchies that span prisons and streets. At the same time, questions arise about long-term stability. Removing leaders does not erase ideology, allegiance, or the allure of gang economics. The raid also has broader implications for national security and public policy. As gangs increasingly adopt paramilitary structures, the boundaries between domestic crime and organized transnational threats blur. For the federal government, the challenge is simultaneous. Protect communities without eroding civil liberties, dismantle sophisticated networks while respecting the rule of law, and prevent reconstitution of criminal armies. The pressing question remains, as law enforcement strikes decisively, how can communities, cities, and the nation ensure lasting security without surrendering freedom? And will America's legal and tactical frameworks adapt fast enough to stay ahead of evolving criminal enterprises? The morning of the raid left Oakland in a tense calm. Armored vehicles had departed, sirens faded, and the streets bore the scars of a conflict few had fully understood until that day. Residents cautiously emerged, witnessing the first tangible signs of liberation from the Serrano's shadow. Yet federal authorities warned that vigilance must remain. Small cells of gang members still operated under federal scrutiny, and the networks that had funneled weapons, drugs, and money to imprison Mexican Mafia generals were far from fully eradicated. Inside safe houses, investigators cataloged hundreds of items: assault rifles, shotguns, handguns with extended magazines, ballistic vests, pounds of methamphetamine, cocaine, fentanyl, heroin, and ledgers detailing coded payments, prison taxes, and narcotics transactions. Devices and encrypted apps documented orders from imprisoned leaders at Pelican Bay Corcoran and Salinas Valley State Prison. Each recovered item represented a thread in a sprawling paramilitary web that had extended from California prisons into the heart of East Oakland. Federal officials emphasized the raid's strategic impact. By severing the Oakland Serrano's command line, the operation destroyed one of La Eme's last northern enforcement nodes. The disruption is expected to significantly diminish the Mexican Mafia's ability to collect extortion payments, move narcotics, and maintain control over affiliated Hispanic gangs across Northern California. According to Defense News and The Guardian, the operation marks the largest disruption of the Mexican Mafia in the Bay Area in over a decade, sending a clear signal to other transnational gangs federal reach is relentless. Yet the operation also underscores broader challenges. La M operates not merely as a gang, but as a national criminal network. Local arrests may cripple a cell, but systemic dismantling requires coordination across federal, state, and local authorities, robust intelligence gathering, and continual monitoring of prison-linked command structures. The BBC noted that such operations tread a delicate line between security enforcement and civil liberty preservation, raising questions about surveillance, wiretapping, and digital monitoring in urban neighborhoods. For Oakland's residents, the raids bring both relief and uncertainty. Graffiti marking gang territories is vanishing. Public parks may soon reclaim their intended purpose. Children can tentatively play in spaces once dominated by fear. Yet decades of intimidation and trauma cannot disappear overnight. Community rebuilding, trust restoration, and preventive interventions are essential to prevent the remnants of the network from reconstituting. Federal task forces in coordination with local policing and community outreach programs are now tasked with ensuring the city does not relapse into gang dominance. President Trump's administration framed the operation as a demonstration of federal resolve. Operation Take Back America represents a new paradigm in domestic law enforcement, integrating intelligence, tactical execution, and digital surveillance to confront paramilitary criminal organizations while asserting the nation's strategic prestige. Yet the question lingers in pursuing security: how far can federal power extend before the liberties it seeks to protect begin to erode? Oakland may have witnessed the fall of a prison army, but the broader struggle remains. Can America dismantle entrenched criminal networks without compromising the freedoms that define it? As the sun sets over East Oakland, that question hangs heavy over streets once governed by fear and now cautiously reclaimed by its citizens.